A high school graduate like you. Go home now.
The people mocking me with amused faces were the parents of my daughter's fiancé. As they pointed out, my highest level of education was a high school graduate due to certain circumstances, but that doesn't give anyone the right to ridicule me. Beside me, my daughter was staring in stunned silence. Unlike his parents, my daughter's fiancé seemed to have a decent sense of judgment and was visibly furious. Judging others based on their education is such a foolish act. What's the point of doing something like that? These two needed to understand firsthand what happens when you judge others by their education. And soon enough, my daughter's future in-laws would regret their careless remarks deeply. My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm 47 years old and work both at home and at a part-time job. Ever since I can remember, I've lived in poverty. The reason? My grandfather's debt. My paternal grandfather used to run a medical equipment company, but his business accumulated massive debts and went bankrupt when I was in kindergarten. Grandpa went out of state for work, and my parents worked tirelessly, without breaks, to repay the debt. Given our situation, going to college was a luxury I couldn't afford. I volunteered to start working right after graduating from high school. Although my parents said they could scrape together enough money to send me to college, seeing how hard they had worked all my life, I wanted to ease their burden as soon as I could. The company I joined was a medical equipment sales firm. It was a business my grandfather had connections with during his time as a company president, and through his introduction, I managed to get the job.
Hey, Sarah, can you lend a hand over here?
Sure, I'm on my way. Working out in the real world was even tougher than I had imagined, and I came home exhausted many days. While learning the challenges of earning money, I worked tirelessly to help pay off the debt. One day, when I was 22 years old, I met a man at a client company. We fell in love at first sight and got married. The following year, we had a daughter. Our daughter, Emily, looks a lot like me, but has a strong personality, just like her dad. I can't wait to see how she grows up. My husband and I laughed together, but our happy life suddenly fell apart. One winter day, it snowed, a rare occurrence in the area where we lived. The next day, the roads froze over. My husband was caught in an accident involving a car that slipped on the icy road and passed away. You left us way too soon. At the time, my daughter Emily was only 1 year old. She didn't understand that her father had died and looked at me curiously as I sobbed uncontrollably. Seeing Emily's innocent eyes, I realized I couldn't just sit in my grief. Wiping my tears, I stood up. From that day on, it became just Emily and me. Relying on my parents wasn't an option. Both of them were still busy working hard to pay off my grandfather's debt. My late husband's parents lived far away and were struggling to recover from the grief of losing their son. In this situation, I had no choice but to raise Emily on my own. Emily, you're starting preschool today.
Preschool?
That's right. I hope you make lots of friends. Emily, who had just turned 3, didn't seem to fully understand what preschool was. I thought that once Emily started going to preschool, my burden might ease a little. But reality was not that kind. Shortly after Emily started preschool, a new problem arose.
I heard Sarah doesn't have a husband.
Oh, really?
Apparently, she's also a high school diploma, and her family is super poor.
When I went to pick up Emily from preschool, I could hear the whispers from the other moms. I glanced toward them discreetly, hoping they wouldn't notice. They were all dressed in stylish clothes, while I wore old, worn-out clothes full of lint. My appearance was probably one of the reasons I stood out among the other moms. At first, I tried my best to fit in, but once they learned about my circumstances and financial situation, they gradually distanced themselves. Before I knew it, I became the target of their gossip. Well, they're harmless, so just let them be. It didn't feel good to be whispering behind my back. But if I confronted them, it might cause even more problems. So, I decided to let them say whatever they wanted.
Did you hear? She used to be a delinquent.
I heard she was in juvie detention center.
That explains why she's a high school grad and broke. Makes sense.
The rumors became increasingly vicious, and baseless stories started spreading. For the record, I've never been to juvie in my life. I was honestly baffled by where such stories originated. Even though strange rumors were circulating, they didn't affect Emily's preschool life, so I continued to ignore them. I thought everyone would eventually get bored and forget about me. However, when Emily started elementary school, the situation became even more serious.
Is it true you're a high school grad and were in juvie? I also heard your family's dirt poor. Could you keep your kid away from mine, please?
Excuse me. One day, while attending a parent-teacher meeting, a stranger suddenly said this to me. The woman was dressed impeccably from head to toe. However, her makeup was a bit heavy, and her clothes seemed overly tight, emphasizing her figure. Well, may I ask your name? Feeling bewildered by her bold appearance, I managed to ask. The woman's face turned red with anger, her lipstick just as bright, as she opened her mouth to speak.
What? You don't know who I am? Unbelievable. I work as a doctor at the city hospital. I run things among the moms at this school.
She kept screeching insults at me in a high-pitched voice. Since it didn't seem like she'd ever introduce herself, I glanced at her name tag to find out her name. Apparently, her name was May Anderson.
High school graduates don't even know manners. This is why I can't stand people with no education. I bet your kid is just as rude as you are.
I couldn't help but marvel at how effortlessly she came up with insult after insult. She had mentioned earlier that she was a doctor. Do people with such high educational achievements also have a vast vocabulary for insults?
May, I think that's enough.
If you keep yelling, the teacher might scold you.
A couple of her friends, who seemed to be her followers. They smiled awkwardly, but it was clear they were a bit taken aback by May's intensity.
Anyway, just make sure your kid stays away from mine.
With that parting remark, May walked away briskly without waiting for my reply. Her excessively high heels clicked loudly as she strode off, and I could only stare blankly at her retreating figure. She says to keep Emily away from her kid, but really who my daughter befriends is up to her. I hadn't interacted much with other moms before, but are they all this intense? If so, I'm truly glad I stayed out of their circles. Having endured so much hardship already, it seemed my mental resilience had grown quite strong. I even thought back to my late husband, who also had a tough spirit, as I returned home as if nothing had happened. A few weeks later,
I'm home.
welcome back. Oh my, you're so dirty. Were you playing outside with your friends? Seeing Emily come home covered in mud, I asked her in surprise. But her response shocked me.
No, Zoe pushed me from behind.
Zoe, you mean May's daughter? According to Emily, May's daughter had a personality much like her mother's and acted bossy toward her classmates. Apparently, she had heard about me from her mother and began picking on Emily after the parent-teacher meeting. But Emily, who had inherited her late father's strong spirit, had stood up to May's daughter and said,
It's true, we don't have much money. But my mom is really kind and a good person. She doesn't talk bad about others like your mom does.
Emily's words were spot on, but May's daughter was enraged. After school, she shoved Emily hard from behind, causing her to fall into a puddle left by the previous day's rain. The puddle was muddy, and Emily got completely covered in it. Thankfully, the mud cushioned her fall, so she didn't get any scrapes or bruises, but her clothes were completely ruined. That's way too much. I need to report this to the school. I didn't care if people mocked me, but laying a hand on my daughter was a completely different story. However, Emily was much stronger than I had imagined.
Oh, it's fine. I already told my teacher. She said she'll talk to Zoe tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah. Plus, some of the kids in my class saw her push me. You're all on my side.
I couldn't help but admire my daughter's calm and level-headed response. Not only was she mentally strong, but she also knew how to handle situations intelligently. After that day, I never heard of May's daughter bothering Emily again. The teacher handled the situation well, even visiting our home later to explain what had happened. May's daughter was firmly reprimanded and has since behaved herself in school. I should learn to be as strong as Emily. However, May began holding a grudge against me over the incident, confronting me at every parent-teacher meeting. While her words sometimes stung, I realized there was no end to it if I let them get to me. I'll face her with the same strong heart as Emily. With this resolve, I managed to keep my cool, but as the school year came to a close in June, May stopped attending the meetings altogether.
I heard she had an affair and her husband divorced her.
Well, she always dressed so flashy, wearing clothes that scream and looking for a man at her age.
Her ex-husband got custody of the kids, and she moved away. But since she's a doctor, she won't have trouble making a living, I guess.
Through gossip among the other moms, I pieced together what had happened to May. For someone who had mocked and looked down on me for being a high school grad, her behavior was truly appalling. The moms who had once followed May's lead quickly began speaking ill of her once she was gone. So, that's what mom friendships are worth. I muttered quietly to myself, letting out a sigh of disbelief. After May moved away, school life became much more peaceful. The incident with May's daughter had made me suspect Emily might be quite intelligent, and it turned out I was right. She scored nearly perfect marks on all her tests and absorbed everything she learned with ease. Though she wasn't very athletic and didn't excel in physical education, her academic achievements were flawless. Emily successfully progressed through middle school and high school. She was accepted into the most prestigious high school in the city and expressed her dream of becoming a doctor.
Oh, don't worry about tuition, Mom. The college I want to attend offers scholarships for top students that don't need to be paid back.
Though we had finally paid off my grandfather's debt, our financial situation was still tight. I had been saving little by little, but I worried about how to cover Emily's college expenses. While I fretted over this, Emily had already figured out a way to pave her own path. Such an easygoing child. It's okay to make your mom work a little harder, you know? I said, half jokingly.
But Mom, you've already worked so hard all your life. There's no way I'd ever want to make things harder for you. I wouldn't let anyone, even myself, cause you more trouble.
Hearing such a thoughtful and kind comment from my daughter almost brought me to tears. Despite all the challenges, I felt like the luckiest person in the world to have Emily as my daughter. Afterward, Emily successfully enrolled in college. Her hard work paid off, and she achieved her dream. Now a doctor, Emily leads a very busy life. Being busy is good, but are you doing okay with marriage prospects? I was starting to worry about Emily as she turned 27. Then, one day, she told me she was considering marriage.
Can I bring him home to meet you sometime?
Of course. The thought of meeting my daughter's boyfriend for the first time made me feel surprisingly giddy for my age. A few days later, Emily brought over a young man who seemed kind and easygoing.
Nice to meet you. I'm Kenny Stone. Emily and I were classmates at med school.
Though he had graduated from medical school, Kenny hadn't become a doctor. Instead, he worked for a pharmaceutical company involved in manufacturing and sales. He seemed kind and dependable. I liked him immediately.
I'd like to ask for your blessing to marry your daughter.
Of course, we'll need to schedule a visit to meet your parents soon. After coordinating schedules, we arranged to visit Kenny's parents a month later. Both of them were doctors, and their home was quite impressive. I started to worry if the gifts we brought were appropriate. Hiding my nerves, I forced a smile and entered the parlor we were shown to. Hi, my name is Sarah Johnson. Thank you so much for inviting us today. My introduction was abruptly cut short. What? The table in the parlor was covered with a large arrangement of dead flowers. Oddly enough, the flowers were placed only at the seat where I was supposed to sit. As I stood there, dumbfounded, Kenny's mother spoke in a cheerful voice.
It's been a while, hasn't it, Sarah?
May, is that you? I was startled by the dead flowers, but even more so by the person sitting there. Across from the seat adorned with flowers was none other than May Anderson, the woman who had bullied me. Though time had passed, her striking appearance and sharp smirk were unmistakable.
It's been years, hasn't it? I divorced my ex-husband and moved to a neighboring city. I even changed workplaces and started working at the general hospital there. That's where I met my current husband and got remarried.
May started rambling on about her life without being asked. From what I gathered, Kenny was her husband's stepson. At first, May hadn't realized that her son's girlfriend's mother was me. Apparently, after Kenny visited our home to introduce himself, he told his parents about us, and that's when May realized I was his fiancé's mother.
What the hell is this? What are you two doing?
Kenny raised his voice, a mix of confusion and anger, as he saw the table covered with dead flowers. Listening to my exchange with May, Emily frowned deeply and glared at May, likely remembering what her daughter had done to her in the past.
Kenny, calm down. This is for your own good. Marrying the daughter of a high school grad would tarnish our family's honor.
Kenny's mouth opened and closed at his dad's words. It seemed like he wanted to say something, but no words came out. Then, with mocking smiles directed at Emily and me, May and her husband, Jimmy, spoke in unison.
A high school grad like you should just leave.
Not only were their words cruel, but their sneering expressions matched perfectly. In the back of my mind, I thought May seemed to have found a like-minded partner in her second marriage. I had been ridiculed for being a high school grad many times before. By now, such insults didn't hurt me at all. But this time, my daughter's future marriage was at stake. As I pondered how to navigate this situation, I heard Emily sigh deeply beside me.
Unbelievable. Pulling such a petty stunt. May, you really haven't changed at all since the old days.
Her voice carried a tone of genuine exasperation, as if she couldn't believe what she was witnessing. May and Jimmy's faces twisted with irritation at Emily's words, but before they could respond, Emily continued.
Do you even know who my mom is?
She's just a poor high school grad, isn't she?
Oh, right. Dad probably didn't tell everyone about her properly.
May and Jimmy furrowed their brows, their expressions saying they had no idea what Emily was talking about. But those faces quickly turned to shock when Emily dropped a bombshell.
My mom is the wife of your boss. You know, Dr. Nathan Johnson, the director of the General Hospital. She's his wife.
What?
May let out a stunned noise, completely thrown off guard. That's right, I'm not a single mother. 15 years ago, I met a man named Nathan and remarried. I met Nathan when he visited the company I worked for as part of his research. At the time, he was an associate professor, gathering data for a paper he was writing. As part of his research, he came to our company to study the medical equipment we sell. Let me show you around.
Thank you.
I was assigned to guide him, answering his rapid-fire questions smoothly and without hesitation. Nathan, looking impressed, and said,
You're very knowledgeable. Have you been working here long?
Yes, actually, my family used to run a medical equipment company. Thanks to those connections, this company hired me straight out of high school.
Really? When I was a kid, I was often sick, and a piece of equipment from a medical company helped me a lot.
As we continued talking, we realized the medical company he mentioned was none other than the one my grandfather had run.
I'm surprised. I never imagined you were the daughter of that company's owner.
Please don't call me that. My grandfather's company ultimately went bankrupt due to poor management. I'm just a single mother desperately trying to raise my daughter. With this exchange, Nathan and I started to grow closer. He often visited my company while working on his paper, giving us plenty of chances to talk.
Well, would you mind exchanging contact information?
One day, Nathan suggested this, and I gladly agreed. By this point, I was already drawn to him, and it seemed the feeling was mutual. Our relationship progressed quickly, and Nathan and I married 15 years ago. Incidentally, it was also his second marriage. His previous relationship hadn't worked out, and they had divorced some time ago. We're both remarried, so let's skip the ceremony. Also, I've had a rough past, and I'm not comfortable socializing with other wives. If it's okay, I'd like to avoid those kinds of interactions. Nathan nodded immediately at my request. I had already told him everything about my experiences. He fully understood how much pain I had gone through because of the other moms.
I also prefer to avoid unnecessary attention. Since I've been advancing steadily at work, there are plenty of people trying to curry favor with me. If I tell them about you, it might cause trouble for you too. I'll just mention that I got remarried without going into details about you.
True to his word, Nathan simply mentioned his remarriage and avoided sharing any specifics. Many people asked to meet his new wife, but he declined all such requests. He didn't even show them my picture, worrying that someone might recognize me and cause issues later. This is why May and Jimmy had no idea I was Nathan's second wife.
This can't be true.
May muttered in disbelief. If you don't believe me, would you like to see a picture? It's a family shot of me, Nathan, and Emily. I placed my phone on the table, displaying the photo. May and Jimmy stared at it intently, their faces gradually turning pale as they looked at our happy family portrait.
I hadn't told my parents much about Emily's family until I visited their home and was introduced. It was a surprise to learn that Emily's father is my parents' boss. I was planning to explain everything during the official meeting, but maybe I should have told them sooner.
No, I think it's better this way. Now we know their true colors.
Kenny replied with a sigh. Though I hadn't known that May was Kenny's stepmother, I was aware that his parents worked under Nathan. Since the engagement wasn't finalized yet, Nathan and I decided not to dig too deeply into the connection.
Let me be clear, I've always disliked you too. Judging people by their education, looking down on and mocking others. It's disgusting, and things only got worse after Dad remarried you.
May flinched at the word, you. She stammered out an awkward excuse.
This is just decoration. Kenny, you're misunderstanding something.
May's right. It's just to brighten up the room. There's no deeper meaning, right, May?
Yes, that's it.
But their desperate, sweaty faces lacked any credibility. Emily, visibly exasperated, delivered a sharp remark.
Didn't you just call my mom an incompetent high school grad? Was that a misunderstanding too?
Both of them broke into a cold sweat, unable to respond. I looked at the two pathetic individuals with a thoroughly exasperated expression before opening my mouth. We'll need to discuss this with my husband. Nathan wasn't here today because he was attending a conference he couldn't miss. Knowing beforehand that my daughter's fiance's parents were his employees, he had planned to introduce himself quietly at the hospital later. But he never anticipated that things would escalate like this. At my words, May jumped to her feet as if jolted. She stumbled toward me, grasped both my hands in an overly familiar manner, and plastered on a forced smile.
Oh, no need for that. Let's just put everything behind us and get along from now on, okay? Our kids are getting married after all. No point in dwelling on the past, right?
I frowned deeply in annoyance and pulled my hands free from her grasp. Taking a step back, I fixed her with a cold glare. I've done nothing to you. You're the one who has harassed and mocked me all along. And now you say there's no point in bringing up the past? I have absolutely no intention of getting along with you. May's lips trembled as she tried to cling to me again. But I stepped aside and turned to Emily. Emily, let's go home. I've seen enough to know exactly what kind of people they are. There's no reason for us to stay here any longer.
Agreed. Just being in the same air as them makes me feel sick.
I'll walk you to the station. As for you two, stay here. We'll talk later.
We left May and Jimmy, who were now pale as ghosts, and quickly exited the house. Once outside, Kenny apologized to us.
I'm truly sorry. I've never gotten along with my parents, but I never imagined they'd do something this outrageous. No, that's just an excuse. It's my fault for not preventing it.
I quickly shook my head at Kenny's apology. This isn't your fault, Kenny. The blame lies squarely with those two. Honestly, I've thought you were a good person since the first time we met. Seeing how firmly you've stood up to your parents has only made me like you more. When I spoke brightly, Kenny gave a tearful but grateful smile. Emily nodded in agreement with my words.
Z, I told you he's a good person, Mom. I want to marry Kenny no matter what. Even if it causes trouble for you and Dad, I can't imagine being with anyone else.
Hearing my daughter's determination, I paused to think for a moment. Surely there had to be a way to make this work. A plan soon formed in my mind. How about this? Both Kenny and Emily looked surprised by my suggestion. A few days later, after returning from his conference, Nathan summoned May and Jimmy to his office. I sat beside him, staring straight at the pair.
You know why you're here, don't you?
Nathan said in a calm, quiet voice. Sweat poured down their faces in response. The sheer amount made me wonder if they'd get dehydrated.
I heard about the awful things you've done to my wife and daughter.
I'm so sorry.
Jimmy blurted out, bowing his head sharply as if he couldn't handle Nathan's commanding presence. Though usually gentle and composed, Nathan could be firm when the situation called for it. He looked down at Jimmy with a cold, detached gaze.
It seems you're apologizing to the wrong person.
For a moment, the two of them looked confused, as if a question mark hovered over their heads. But as realization dawned on their faces, they immediately turned to me.
We deeply apologize for our behavior.
We had no idea you were the director's wife.
Hearing May's excuse, even at this point, made me utterly disgusted. And what does being the director's wife have to do with it? If I were just a high school grad single mother, would you not have apologized at all for how you treated me? At my pointed question, May let out a sharp gasp. What you've done is unacceptable, regardless of who the other person is. Judging people by their education is exactly why this happened. May, now pale and trembling, seemed on the verge of collapsing as she listened to my words. Then she stood up from her chair with her trembling body and apologized deeply to me.
I'm truly, truly sorry.
Following May, Jimmy quickly apologized to me. Their appearance was pitiful and almost evoked sympathy. Even after everything she had put me through, I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for her. But I couldn't forgive them. You tried to interfere with my daughter's engagement, I don't care if you mock me. But if Emily is involved, that's another story. With both of them still bowing their heads, I revealed a truth to them. It was something that would undoubtedly shock them. Emily and Kenny will get married, but Kenny will marry into our family. As part of this, he's decided to sever ties with you.
What?
No, that can't be.
Both of them raised their heads in shock, their faces filled with disbelief. I looked at them with unwavering resolve. Kenny said he deeply resents you both. He feels ashamed to be your son and was visibly pained by it. Seeing that, I suggested he join our family and cut ties with you, and he was thrilled to accept. This proposal was what I had discussed with Kenny and Emily after leaving May's house. Initially, they were surprised, but they soon agreed it was a great idea. Kenny also said this about you. He's grateful for what you did to raise him, but that's it. The day you told him you wouldn't pay tuition unless he went to med school, he gave up on you as parents. He said if he cuts ties, he won't even attend your funerals. He wants you to act as if he never existed. Tears welled up in their eyes as they listened, their expressions filled with shock and despair. No matter how flawed they were, being hated by their child seemed to cut deep. For these two, Kenny marrying into my family was likely the harshest punishment of all. This is all your own doing. Apologizing to me now won't change anything. All you can do is silently regret your actions for the rest of your lives. Tears streamed silently down their faces as they listened to my words. Afterward, Nathan had them escorted out of his office. They staggered out, their steps unsteady. Kenny, meanwhile, blocked their contact information and began the process of joining my family. He also started the legal procedure to sever ties with his parents. Since this required legal expertise, Nathan introduced him to a skilled lawyer.
Under the law, complete disownment isn't possible in the U.S., but there's something close to it. I feel so relieved knowing I won't have to deal with those two anymore. I can't thank Sarah and Nathan enough.
Seeing Kenny smile, I was truly glad I had suggested that he join our family. Meanwhile, May and Jimmy, still unwilling to give up, tried to reach Kenny through Nathan. The two of them persistently pestered Nathan to the point that his usual patience wore thin, and one day, he finally snapped.
If you keep this up, I'll have you leave the hospital.
Those words seemed to have a significant impact. After that, they stopped bothering Nathan entirely. Abandoned by their son, the two became completely dejected and reportedly started making frequent mistakes at work.
They were never well regarded by patients or staff in the first place. At this rate, they'll end up leaving the hospital eventually.
Nathan said with exasperation, to which I could only respond with a wry smile. 6 months later, Emily and Kenny got married without a hitch. Kenny joined our family, changing his name from Kenny Stone to Kenny Johnson. While the couple usually lives in their own home, they visit us whenever they have time off, spending quality moments together.
Hey, how about we all go on a trip soon? It might be hard to coordinate everyone's schedules with work, but...
That sounds great. I'll make sure to take some paid leave for it.
I haven't had a break in a while either. It'd be nice to take some time off. Where should we go? Tourist spots are great, but staying at a fancy resort and relaxing sounds amazing too.
Watching the three of them smile and excitedly plan our trip, I couldn't help but smile myself. There were tough times, but I'm genuinely happy now. Savoring this happiness, I'm determined to continue enjoying life with my beloved family by my side.